Hey, good afternoon or good morning, wherever you are joining us from. Thank you for joining our Career Quest session today. My name is Hank. I am an employer engagement manager with our Career Services Department, and I work as a liaison for the School of Education, and also our military outreach partners. Today, I'm excited to have Tasha Turner join us from WGU Talent Acquisition Team to talk a little bit about how to optimize your resume to apply for WGU roles. We have had Tasha join us in the past and has always provided great insight and information to help students and graduates apply for different roles at WGU. With that being said, I am going to pass the mic over to Tasha. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. As you mentioned, my name is Tasha Turner. I am a lead talent acquisition partner here, and I'm really excited to be here and spend some time talking about how to build and optimize your resumes. Um, and at the end, as you mentioned as well, we'll also have a Q&A. So anything that's being presented or you think of something else that you want more clarification on, feel free to come off mute and happy to answer any questions that you may have. So now that we've set the stage for today, let's start with the foundation of why your resume matters in the first place. So on the next couple slides, as a recruiter, I can tell you that your resume often determines whether you move forward before a conversation ever happens. We can go one more slide. It's more than just a document. It's your introduction. It's your first impression and often your ticket to the next step, which is the interview. So let's talk a little bit of why getting it right matters. Your resume, again, this is your first impression. And before you ever meet a hiring manager or a recruiter, your resume is speaking for you. So you don't want to think of it as just a list of jobs that you have. It's a marketing tool. You want to think of it as your personal ad campaign. Every word, every section is telling a story of why you are the right fit for the role that you're applying to. On this next slide, we're going to look at three main resume formats. If you've ever searched online, you've probably seen endless templates, endless different formats on resumes and advice for which resume to use. And it can be hard to know, which resume is the best one for you. So we'll talk about three different resumes. There's a chronological resume. This is the most common format that employers do prefer. It lists your experience, starting with your most recent role, and then works best with your background that already aligns with the position that you're specifically targeting. It is also very recruiter and ATS friendly. The next resume is a functional resume, and this particular resume focuses more on skills rather than work history. It can be useful if there's a major career pivot or employment gaps, but it's generally less preferred because employers still want to see a clear work timeline. A combination resume blends both skills and work history, making it a strong option for career changers or someone who has transferable skills, but the job titles may not directly align with what you're applying to. But honestly, no matter which format you choose, the strongest resumes clearly show relevant experience, dates, measurable impacts, and aligns with the job description. And also another key thing to remember is resumes evolve over time. So what had worked years ago may not be what works today. So it's important to know what should be included on your resume, especially with the applicant tracking systems that we use that screens resumes before recruiters ever see them. So now let's talk about the first step in optimizing your resume, which is understanding the job description. So before you ever apply to a position, it's really important to carefully take time to read the job description, especially the qualifications section. You want to be sure that you meet or ideally exceed all of the minimum qualifications and preferred qualifications before applying. So what does that really mean? Minimum qualifications are the non-negotiable requirements that are needed for the role for WGU. So at WGU, minimum qualifications are the essential criteria required to be considered for a role, such as a specific degree or required years of experience. These requirements should be clearly visible on your resume so that recruiters can easily confirm that you meet them. When you see preferred qualifications on additional or on the job description, this is typically going to be your additional skills, a higher degree, or other experience that helps you stand out from just someone who has the minimum qualifications. This also includes certifications or a specialized knowledge that they're looking for. These are often highlighted in your summary section, your skills section, or even in your work experience, which really strengthens your application. When talent partners at WGU review resumes, and we do, every resume that comes through, we look at every single one. We evaluate candidates against the qualifications that are listed directly in the job description. So if those qualifications are not clearly reflected on your resume, we're not able to move forward with you. Even if you have the experience and all of that, if we can't see that and read that on the resume, we would not be able to move forward with you because our review is based solely on what appears on the resume. So it's important to make sure that that's clearly outlined before you submit that. And I have a fun analogy on the next slide, just a fun way to remember the difference between minimum and preferred qualifications. So you want to think of minimum qualifications as the cupcake itself. Without the cupcake, there's nothing to build on. So without the minimum qualifications, there isn't an application to consider. Preferred qualifications are like the frosting and the sprinkles. They're not required, but they make the cupcake more appealing and help it stand out. Hiring managers need the cupcake, but they appreciate the frosting and the sprinkles too. So when you think about your resume, you want to ask yourself, am I bringing just the cupcake or am I also showing the frosting and sprinkles that make me stand out? So now that we've covered the cupcake, let's walk through how to actually build that into your resume with ATS. Now, the ATS is often also known as the applicant tracking system. And this is where the software screens resumes before a recruiter ever sees them. But again, as I mentioned earlier, recruiters at WGU review every single resume. The ATS system is just doing background work that if we want to look at it, we can, but we still have to review every resume that comes through. So when you're working with the ATS systems, which many companies use to get through it, you have to play by its rules. So I can assure you again that we do look at everything, but there are still rules that we have to meet so your resume successfully gets through there. You also want to pull keywords directly from the job posting. So you want to look at the title, qualifications, and duties and mirror those words on your resume. So for example, if it says student retention, you wouldn't want to just say kept students engaged. You want to use a very similar phrase or exact phrase in that situation. Using both acronyms and full terms. If you write LMS on your resume, you would also want to spell it out, Learning Management System. This way you get credit no matter how the system is set up. You also want to avoid complex formatting. ATS cannot always read tables, text boxes, graphics, pictures of yourself. So you always want to keep it simple and you always want to keep it text only. Continuing on the next slide, you want to keep it about 1 to 3 pages. There's no hard number. However, you want to remember that the recruiter and the ATS system is also reading these pages as well. You want to use easy to read fonts like Arial or Times New Roman, and typically keeping the size between 10 to 12 point size. You always want to use bullet points in your work history over paragraphs. It makes it easy not only for the recruiter to read, but also for the ATS system. And then finally, when you're ready to save it, you want to use PDF and simply just your first name, last name, and then the resume. Saving it as a PDF just keeps the formatting looking clean and professional how you intended it to look. So I brought up mirroring the job description, and on the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Oops. Oh, and why it matters. So when we say mirroring the job description, we don't mean copy and pasting it word for word. We mean making sure that your resume clearly reflects the same skills, qualifications, and language that the employer is asking for. When it truthfully matches your experience. So, for example, if the job description asks for project management, stakeholder collaboration, but your resume uses vague language that doesn't clearly connect to those areas, the recruiter or the applicant tracking system may not automatically make that connection. So mirroring the job description helps in a few different ways. It shows alignment with the role, helps the applicant tracking system recognize relevant keywords, makes it easier for the recruiters to quickly see why you are a strong fit. The key is to use the employer's language where it's appropriate while still describing your own experience in your own words. On the next three slides, we're going to take a look at three different ways that we can mirror it on your resume and what that looks like so you have a better idea. So on this first slide here, we're going to look at the summary section. Now, a professional summary section on your resume is completely optional, but if you are going to use it, we have to follow the rules and keep it updated. But in this slide, you'll see a great example. On the left side, you have the minimum qualifications and the preferred qualifications, and then we have the summary example on the right side. We coded it so you can kind of match them, crossing that line and kind of seeing how they align. So the job experience with the Microsoft Office and Adobe, you can see on the right side, the summary clearly states proficiency in both. Then you have where it says the role mentions administrative support experience. And then on the right side, you can also see over 3 years in similar environments. So when we say mirroring, that's what we're doing. We're just tying those two together. So on the resume, we're automatically seeing where you fit in this role. On the next slide, talks about the work experience. Building on the same concept, but applying it now to the work experience section. You'll notice the alignment where the role requires administrative support experience. And on the right side in the work experience, it shows resume shows manage daily administrative workflows. So we're pulling and highlighting from the qualification section and making sure that it's clearly demonstrated on the resume. It also calls out on the qualification section, Microsoft Office and Adobe. And on the right side, you'll see the resume clearly states those tools and how they've been used. So this is what a strong alignment looks like in practice. When you're going back and looking at job descriptions, you'll know exactly what that mirroring is going to look like. On the final slide is the skills section. Again, minimum qualifications on the left side, and then the skill section on the right. And you'll notice how intentional this is. You'll see the role requires Microsoft Office and Adobe, and you'll also see them both clearly listed in the skills section with additional information as well. Salesforce is a preferred qualification. You'll see that at the bottom left, but you see that clearly called out directly in the skills section. So this again is just really highlighting why you are the right fit for this role, not only meeting the minimum qualifications, but also those preferred qualifications as well. So now that we have talked a little bit about mirroring, we want to talk about how do we save our resume when it's ready. So when submitting your resume, PDF is generally the preferred format, and for a good reason. It preserves your formatting exactly as intended. So your spacing, your fonts, layout stays consistent no matter what device or system the recruiter opens it on. It also tends to look a bit more polished and professional, and really helping you make a stronger first impression. With the Word documents, formatting can often shift depending on the version of Word or operating system being used. So something that looks clean on your screen could appear misaligned or cluttered or missing on someone else's screen, which can unintentionally impact the presentation of your resume. That said, always follow the employer's application instructions. If a company specifically requests a Word document, you absolutely want to submit a Word document. But if you ever have a choice, such as WGU, PDF is typically the safest and most professional option. So I have another cupcake analogy, going back to that analogy earlier. So when you upload a PDF, you want to think of it like putting your cake in a sturdy box with clear wrapping. It's going to keep its shape no matter who picks it up. When you upload it in a Word document, it's like setting your cupcake in a flimsy plastic bag. The frosting might get squished, the shape might get messed up, and it may not look exactly how you sent it off. Word files are still okay sometimes, but you don't necessarily have control how that cake looks like, and it might lose its appeal. So let's talk about the resume checklist and before you submit it. Now that you have your resume ready to go, we want to check off some things before we click that submit button. And this is going to be your final check before it is off to the recruiters. You always want to make sure that you're presenting the best version of yourself. And you always want to make sure you have someone proofread your resume to check for common mistakes that sometimes we overlook because we've been looking at our resume way too long. You want to be sure to choose reviewers carefully. A trusted reviewer can include mentors, managers, colleagues in your field. WGU has a career services that you can also reach out to, which is free. Definitely take advantage of them. And often someone who understands the type of role that you're targeting. These are individuals that can really help assess your resume, your alignment, the clarity and professionalism that you're trying to convey. And remember, the goal isn't just grammar feedback, it's making sure that your resume clearly demonstrates that you meet the qualifications for the role. And always remember, there's no single perfect resume format. What matters most is that your resume is clear, tailored, and impactful, and why you are the right fit for the role. So I have some resume examples. We talked about the applicant tracking system a few slides ago. And in this resume example, Patrick didn't listen after taking this course because he loves his resume. It's perfect. He's been using it for years and he spent a lot of time on it. And while it does look perfect to him, remember, we want to avoid using graphs, charts, and other heavy design elements on your resume because the applicant tracking system cannot always read them. On the next slide, let's see how Patrick's resume comes through with the ATS system. And this is actually a resume that I received here. And remember, I mentioned earlier, if those qualifications are not clearly shown on your resume, we cannot move forward to consider you for the role. So when we review resumes here, again, we're skimming for texts, how you align with the job description. We're not looking at visuals, pictures, graphs. We're scanning for the keywords and the concrete evidence of skills that align with the minimum and preferred qualifications. So best practice here is you want to be sure to keep your resume clean, text-based, use bullet points, bold headings, such as this resume that is on the screen right now. And we're going to break down each section so you have a good understanding of what's most important and why. Um, so again, you're looking at the headings, employers, professional summary, education, skills section, and certifications. And I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of different versions. This is just a sample, but just to give us an idea of what's needed on the resume. So we'll start with the simplest part of your resume, the header. You would be surprised how often this gets wrong. Either leaving out numbers, emails, we have to contact you somehow. So be sure that you have your full name, your city and state, number, email. And if you are using a LinkedIn profile, it's optional, but if you are using it, you want to make sure that it is a working link. And what I mean by that is when you send it over, if I click on it, it will take me to your LinkedIn. Recruiters never look at the LinkedIn, but we do have, if you do use it for anything else, it's definitely something that you want to make sure is working, but that is not part of our consideration when we're reviewing resumes. And then the next one is your professional summary. Professional summary is an optional section, but if you're going to use it, this is a section that has to be updated pretty much for every role because it's very specific to what you're applying to. So you want to make sure that you're following the rules that go into the professional summary and making sure you're writing it out the way it's intended to be used. Work experience. This section is probably one of the most important parts of your resume because it shows how you've applied your skills in real work settings. So each role should have or should include a job title, employer, location, employment dates, which includes month and year, so that we can clearly understand your career timeline. Another reason month and year is extremely important is because a lot of our roles here require you to have a specific number of years for to be considered for that role. So if a role requires 3 years experience and you only have you know, 1 year, if you say that I worked at a position in 2022, but you don't have a month and year on there, I don't know when you started or when you ended. So I wouldn't be able to consider you because I would have no idea what your time was at that position. So you always want to be sure to use month and year. It leaves the guessing out, leaves any assuming out, and it keeps your resume looking clear and tells a story and lets the recruiters know exactly how you fit for this role. Listing only years can kind of be misleading since it can, it doesn't really give us the full picture. We want the full picture. So recruiters need to know how long you've been in each role. If a resume only says 2022 to 2023, again, this could mean 1 month or almost 2 years. So remember, we want that clear picture. On the let's see, work history, education. This is, we can go say back on that last slide. Education section is really important. Some of the main things you want to remember is you want to list your degree exactly the way it's printed on your diploma. Over time, I think sometimes applicants will abbreviate their degree or their school and leave out stuff, but we want to have that degree listed exactly how it's printed on your diploma, as well as the school name. So you also want to list the school that you graduated from on your diploma the way it's spelled out on your diploma as well. So you wouldn't want to just say WGU. You would want to say Western Governors University. Also, you definitely want to be sure, especially for recent college graduates, include your degree, school, graduation date on your resume so we have the clear timeline and context. Missing dates can create unnecessary questions about whether the degree was completed or how recent the education is. And it helps gain a more clear picture again of your resume. But the exact graduation date becomes less important as you grow in your career. I know there's a lot of different um, information out there about dates, but what I've seen and what I've read is they usually say, after 10 or 15 years, then you can consider taking that date off if you wanted to. Completely optional. I still keep mine on. But after 10, 15 years and your work history, is doing more of the speaking, then that's something that you can consider down the line. Also, if you're still in your degree, such as this doctorate degree, the way that you would say that on your resume would say expected December 2026. So whatever that month and year that you expect to graduate, that would be what you would put in there. And you want to be sure to keep that updated. So as soon as you graduate, you definitely want to just put the year that you graduated. And you can also put the month and year if you wanted to as well. Just want to keep that consistent. For the skills section, you don't want to overload this section. You just want to pick the ones that you can back up with real experience and that are relevant to the role that you're applying to. Again, you can pull these directly from the job description. And so again, that's going to help us match you and say, oh, this person's a strong fit because they meet these skills that were posted in the job description. Certifications, again, add only if they're relevant to the role. When it comes to certifications, also listing the dates. Here can be a little bit tricky, so make sure that you know how to List the dates if they are required for that certification, or if they expire or need renewal, or if they are required for a specific role. You definitely want to make sure that you're listing that information accurate so we can evaluate your resume the best that we can. So we can go on to that final slide. Perfect. So we'll recap a little bit, a lot of information. But bottom line is your resume plays a critical role in highlighting how your experience aligns with the position and tailoring it so it can significantly increase your chances to get that interview. We looked at a few different resumes: chronological, functional, and combination. But again, just remember, you want to just make sure that your resume has the most relevant information that aligns with the job description. We use the cupcake concept just to remember the minimum qualifications. Those are the foundations of the cake, and then clearly demonstrating that on your resume. Well, the preferred qualifications is that extra layer to help you stand out. But honestly, overall, the goal is to be clear, aligned, and intentional with how you present your experience. And lastly, I would say, when applying for roles, be strategic where you spend your time. I understand and know applications are lengthy. I get it. So focusing on positions where your experience meets every minimum qualification can truly increase your chances of getting that interview. And all roles list minimum qualifications and preferred qualifications. So if you do not meet the minimum qualifications, your applications may be screened out early in the process. However, if you meet all of the minimum qualifications and most or all of the preferred qualifications and clearly demonstrate that on your resume, you're much more likely to move forward. And this approach will really help you, with your use of time and improve your interview outcomes, which ultimately is our goal when we're applying for a position. So with that, let's open the floor for any questions. Feel free to come off mute or ask them in the chat.
All right. Well, thank you for that. And like Tasha said, it's our Q&A time. So if you would like to come off mute and ask your question directly, please use the raise your hand function and I will unmute you so you can ask your question. But if not, I do see some questions in the chat. Now, I do want to make the announcement that please limit your questions to the questions that are beneficial for the group. I know there is a lot of positions and a lot of questions in regards to what is available. So I will drop in the WGU career site into the chat so you can view any open roles that may be available. But if you have a question in regards to your resume or applying at WGU, please ask your question and we'll definitely give you the opportunity to do so. So I'm going to open the chat. Give me 1 second here. I know there was a lot of great questions in the chat, so I definitely want to make sure that we ask them. So I do have a question from Nina to start us off in the chat. If one has multiple resumes tailored to each applied role, will this create duplicate candidates with different resumes in a recruiting software? And would this be frowned upon by TA?
Not at all. We often see that a lot. So they usually will go to a different recruiter. Different recruiters carry different positions. We do see that you apply to other positions, but it doesn't change how we review your application and we'll consider you for that role.
Great. See here. Sorry about that. All right. Now, we do have some great content in here as far as asking about being suspicious with AI using resumes. Now, as you mentioned, you don't use AI. You guys are looking through resumes. Now, is that something that you guys scan for as well? If it seems too AI like when someone's applying for their resume, applying for a role?
Great question. So currently, as far as I know, we're only using the applicant tracking system. I am not aware of any AI that we are specifically using, but it shouldn't change how we are currently reviewing resumes. As I mentioned, we review every application that someone applies to for a specific role. So currently, right now, we don't have any specific AIs that are doing anything with the resumes. That is still something that is being looked at by recruiters.
All right. And I know you touched on years of experience and what to add in your resume and what to not add. So I want to just kind of check in with you as far as a question that was asked by Shannon in a reply from Maggie. Always wondering about what about resumes that have a lot of jobs, over 30 years in the workforce, and how can those put, would you apply any irrelevant positions to your job when applying?
Yeah, absolutely. Oop, did we freeze?
Oh, no, you're good.
Okay, absolutely. So there's a couple ways that you can do that. You don't necessarily have to list the work experience the way we have it in the with all the bullet points. Typically, once you hit 20 years, 15, 20 years back, all you need to do is actually, can we, if it's okay, pull up that PowerPoint?
Uh, yes, I can.
Yeah. And then I can show you an example of what you would include for something 15, 20 years. I would say if it's within the 15 to 20 years and it's relevant to the role that you're applying to, we would want to include the bullet points. But if it's not, all that you would need to include um, toward the end, all that you would need to include would be the job title, the employer, and then the month and year for that position. And then there you go, perfect. So with professional experience, again, with anything relevant to the role within 20 years, oops,
Yep,
you
sorry.
would want to list the bullet points, but anything after that, you can just list the job title. There you go. The job title, the company, the location, and the month and year. And that would be fine. And then that way, you're also saving space too, because you're not listing those bullet points. But again, that typically happens after 15, 20 years. And then if we have questions about that, we can ask that during the interview, because by that time, if they're relevant to the role, we'll already know that you have that experience from your current positions.
Great. And like Tasha mentioned, we do have a lot of resources that are available for you to help you with your resume. One of those resources is being JobScan, and JobScan is a AI tool that helps you evaluate your resume. And we also have a JobScan career quest session next week, and I'll add that into the chat as well. All right, great. So we do have a couple more questions that came in. One being from Laura: is it still recommended to include your city and state if you're applying for a job that's not in the same area?
100%. Yes, always include city and state. We used to way back when have full addresses on resumes, but currently the way it is we still want your city and state. That could be for a variety of reasons and to avoid any confusion or questions back and forth on your resume. Again, that is something that is still needed on your resume, even if it's a remote position that you're applying to.
Right now, um, another question, and this is a question from Shannon again. Do WGU recruiters refer you to different recruiters if they think you would be a good fit for a different role?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So oftentimes we know who's sometimes we know who's recruiting for different roles or who would be a good fit. So if you were to apply to one of my positions, but you may not be a strong fit for that role or for whatever reason, I think you might also be a good fit for another role that I know is out. We definitely share that within talent acquisition. And then sometimes even let you know as well during the interview if you've come to that stage what other positions are there as well?
Great. All right. Question that came in from Jane. When applying to WGU Academy opportunities, do they fall under the WGU umbrella or they consider their own entity? Good question.
So we have a team that does hiring for WGU Academy, but they still come under WGU, like our same system. Does that answer your question?
I'll give her a minute to answer.
Hopefully it
All
does.
right. We'll come back to that. All right. Now, yes, thank you. Great. Would you recommend making data points and impact points stand out by making them bold or highlighting in your resume document so a TA recruiter can look at them faster, or does ATS take issues with that? Great question.
Yeah, great question. I would say if you're going to bold anything, it would be something that is being mirrored in the job description, not necessarily data points. I mean, I guess it also depends on what specifically you're speaking of, but I would say I have seen it done very cleanly on resumes, but it is usually highlighting or bolding points or mirroring job description words on the resume.
Okay, great. And we do have a question from Wayne, and I know I missed a question, so I'll get to that. I'll go ahead and unmute you, Wayne, so you can ask your question. Give you that opportunity so you can, oh, there you go.
Oh, hi. Thank you so much for this presentation. This has been really helpful and informative. My question was, if you have any certification or education in a different name, like if you change your name like a couple years back and all your work experiences in that name, like do you have to include that on your resume as well?
So on your resume, it's going to be titled your current legal name. But for everything else, like if we had a surname or, any type of reason for a full name change or anything, when that will come up if it's by our third party when you move forward in the position. So like if they request any certification or that you're in the background check, that will all come up during that stage. Usually, most of our roles don't require to add a certification. But if it does, you can always include that. And then if it comes up during the interview, that would just be something you can also bring up. But typically, that is taken care of by a third party once you move forward in the position.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That answers my question.
Excellent. Thank you.
Great. All right. And I see that my colleague Azra has dropped in some information in the chat. I appreciate you for that. So it posted the WGU career link. So thank you. Do we have any other questions?
And if you posted them in the chat and we missed them, feel free to come off mute. We don't want
Yes,
to miss
please.
anything.
All right. Well, while people are still adding up, we have someone here. Someone's unmute, needs unmute. Ramon, Ramana.
I see that someone posted Handshake. Now, I do know Handshake is more geared for when you're a student. And then the other link that was posted earlier, and for intern roles, like if you want to do internship as well, and Anthony, you might know more. And then the wgu.edu with the about careers, that link is for roles specifically to WGU.
Yes. And with Handshake, we do post our roles. There are roles that are posted there from WGU. So we have that, those roles that are added, but definitely go ahead and check out the WGU actual career page because those roles are added the day of so that they're fresh and they're readily available for you. So you'll see new positions added there quickly. So we do have a number of questions that came in, and I'm just trying to keep up with everything right here. So let's see, how long does it take to hear back from WGU when applying for a role? Great
Great
question, Val.
Great question. It depends on where that role is, but typically you should hear back within 2 weeks. I would say would be like the longest, I think. But sometimes roles get held up on the back end, and sometimes it could be a little bit longer, but typically you will hear back either way. If you're resume does not meet the qualifications for the roles, you'll get an email. And then if they want to move forward with you as well, you'll also get an email to set up an interview as well. So either way, you would be hearing back. But usually I would hope it's within 2 weeks at the very latest. But I do know sometimes there's things on the back end that are being worked out, or there's a pause, or someone's out of office. So that can also, make that timeline a little bit longer, but shouldn't be too much longer.
Right. And now, do they send out rejection emails? I'm pretty sure they do.
We do. Yes, absolutely. You should definitely receive one. Again, sometimes things get held up and you may not necessarily get that right away, but you should also get that within the first couple of weeks as well, typically.
Great. Question that we have is, I have been seeing advice on adding a line to describe your company. If it's not well known on the resume, is this helpful? Would you recommend this? Great question.
I'm sorry, can you ask me that one more time?
Yeah, so I have been seeing advice on adding a line to describe your company if it's not well known on the resume. Is this helpful, or would you recommend this?
If you have the space on your resume, it would be an optional situation. I do see it sometimes. It's not necessary because if we do have questions, we can simply put the employer into, we can look it up. But also that is something else that is looked up by our third party, should you move forward in a position as well.
Great. Okay, good. And thank you for that question. All right. So question from Robert. What about student jobs like peer coaching or course specific coach? Can you mention that a bit in that process?
Sure. So peer coaching, not 100% familiar with that role, but I will say all of our roles have a process. So if you do move forward and a recruiter does reach out for an interview, most of the roles will have at least 3 interviews. So the first one would be with the recruiter, the second one would be with the hiring manager, and then the final interview would be with their leader. So most roles here do have a minimum of 3 interviews. We do have a couple roles that require 2 interviews, and then any positions, supervisors and above, will usually have 4 more interviews. So it just depends on which role that you're applying to.
Right, thank you. And I know there was a question that I missed in the chat, and it was reposted. So I want to get back to that. Gabby, can I list LinkedIn certificates on my resume?
So LinkedIn Learning certificates can be appropriate on a resume. They're not the same as a formal certification, license, or accredited credentials. But if they're directly relevant to the role, I mean, and you have the space on your resume, definitely add that. It can't hurt. But oftentimes that's not going to be something at WGU that's listed in the job description, so we wouldn't require that. But again, if you have the space and you want to add some professional development on, and you are working on either a career pivot, or you are getting more experience in that area, it definitely cannot hurt to add that on your resume.
And just a note that Tasha was with us back in March when we held a session for strictly for mentor roles and student support roles. So she gave some great advice and some great tips for that. So I will definitely share that in the follow-up email as well. So if that's something that you are interested in and you could check out, you can definitely do that. Just a reminder, all of our sessions are posted on our career YouTube page. So if you were ever thinking about a session or an employer that we previously had on our Career Quest, or any other sessions that we put on, definitely check out WGU's career YouTube channel, because there's some great resources and some great sessions there for you to take a look at. Right, so we do have a lot of questions, a lot of engagement there. So next question, do course instructors have to have a master's degree? If you have 25 years in tech, but just working on a WGU BS degree, would you be filtered out since you do not have a higher degree?
Short answer, yes. Long answer, yes. Our course instructors, they typically only have about 3 to 4 minimum qualifications listed in the job description, and the very first one will either be a master's or a doctorate degree. So if you do not have that, you will be filtered out. And actually, I think you would be declined when you answer the question if you have a master's degree or not. But I would say definitely after you're done with your bachelor's, get that master's degree, and then you would be able to be considered for that position.
Great. And staying in line with consideration, is there any special consideration for like WGU alumni?
There's no special consideration. We do honestly evaluate all of the applicants equally. And again, we are reviewing every single resume against the job description and, moving forward with the candidates that, are closely matched with those roles.
Okay. Now, when applying for roles, should they include cover letters or is it not needed? How do you feel?
If the position asks you to submit a cover letter, if they ever ask you to submit anything, make sure you submit everything that's being asked. Cover letters are, I believe that they're one of those things that are optional. But I would say definitely add a cover letter if you're changing careers and you want to add more background or insight to maybe some of your history that is not necessarily going to be on your resume. But also, if you want to stand out, sometimes I have hiring managers who ask me, did this person submit a cover letter and can you send it with the resume? So it really just depends on what that hiring manager is looking for. But I would say a lot of my applicants that I specifically get don't always have cover letters. Our main focus when we're reviewing and considering you for a role is going to be that resume. But again, don't let that deter you from working on a cover letter and submitting that if you want to.
Great. All right, so we do have a few minutes left and definitely want to make sure that we get all our questions asked. So if you do have any last minute questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat or use the hand function so we can call on you. Cassandra asked if qualifications list something like a bachelor's in business, but your BA is in something else and you have an MBA, does that count or would that kick you out, get kicked out?
Yeah, so in that situation, your bachelor's is probably, or I'm sorry, bachelor in the preferred, your preferred qualifications in that position probably is going to have a master's degree, either MBA business or somewhere relevant in that area. So you would still meet the qualifications for that role because that MBA is going to supersede that bachelor's in business for that particular area. And we do see that a lot. Sometimes we have positions. Where they need someone with a master's in doctorate in nursing, but their master's doesn't necessarily have to be in nursing. But if they have that doctorate, sometimes they've taken a different path, but then they go back and get that doctorate. That helps them, so they don't necessarily have to meet that first minimum as long as that preferred is being met.
Great. That's actually a great question. Thank you for covering that. Question from Nina. If one updates their resume and it's a much better version, can you and should one resubmit that resume?
Well, once you submit an application, you cannot change out your application or your resume. So when you hit that submit button, it is final. That is, if you messed up something or you catch an error later on, we can't change that. Now, if you get a hold of the recruiter and you can submit the resume, we will definitely still look at that. But oftentimes it's going to be something that they might have already moved forward with the candidates on by the time you might have caught it. But you, unfortunately, with our system, you're not able to switch out a resume once you submit that.
Great.
Great questions.
Yes, and still waiting if anyone has any last minute questions. I did want to plug in that this session is recorded. We will be sending that out to you here in the next 24 hours, including in that email, you will receive some information in regards to some resources and also a feedback survey that I'll also drop that in our chat as well. Our feedback surveys, we really take that information and apply it to the sessions that we plan for throughout the year. So if you have any questions, if you like this session or want to hear from different sessions that are particularly to your major and employers that you're interested in, please let us know by indicating on that form, because that gives us the opportunity to provide you with resources and the sessions that are important to you. Right. All right. So we have thank you from Nina in there. We have another question. So Charlotte, what's the best place to learn more about WGU roles that isn't just the open job board? With career counseling from WGU work? Yeah, you can go
Um,
ahead.
Actually, our website is really good. There's actually on the side of the website, you can see different roles that may not be posted, but it talks about the role and tells you, it gives you a little bit more insight than typically what you see on the job description. So even if that particular role is not posted, you can learn more about that role or similar roles in that area. It's not up there for all roles, but I know there's one for instructors, enrollment, program mentors. And I know that they're working on a bunch more in the next couple of months.
Great. All right. Thank you. Right, so I'll give it another minute here just to see if we have any additional questions. I'm also going to throw in that link to our career quest. We do have a number of great sessions left in the month, and will be great opportunity, especially for the job scan session. That I'll include in that email as well. So if you are interested in learning how to use JobScan, or even just connecting with one of our career advisors to update your resume or just start your resume off based on the conversation we had with Tasha today, definitely check those resources out. It'll definitely help you in your job search. All right, so I don't see any more questions in the chat. But Tasha, do you have any last final words before we wrap up?
I would say the other thing, I'm just kind of scanning through some of the questions too, but also once you graduate with your bachelor's degree, that bachelor's degree, and you add that to your resume, you can then remove your high school diploma. That often won't be needed on your resume anymore because now you have your bachelor's, and that will supersede that requirement for there. And that's why you notice on my example earlier, I didn't have a high school diploma on there because I had bachelor's, master's, and a doctorate listed.
Right. And yes, I can definitely put that up. And I'll also include that slide in the email as well. All right. And one question, does that also apply for associate's degree?
Yes. However, I do have some nurses who get their RN through their associate degrees, and oftentimes that is left on that diploma. So if it's relevant and you got some type of certification or something is tied to that associate's, you may want to leave that on. But in most cases, you'll be able to take the associates off, and your bachelor's will then, the associates won't be needed once you have your bachelor's in most cases. Great question.
And yes, Robert, we did answer the LinkedIn certification question. No, you're all right. This is why we have these sessions, for you to ask questions. You have the opportunity to get in front of the recruiters, get in contact with employers that you may not have to. So take this time, any of our sessions, to network and build those connections. So, and there is Tasha's information there. Also, she included Melissa's info, but like I mentioned, I'll include this in the wrap up as well. Great. Right. Well, we have a lot of great context in our chat. A lot of people are very appreciative for you, Tasha, for joining us. So I definitely want to thank you for joining us again for another career service session. This is a great opportunity for students and alum to hear about how to apply at WGU, what things they can do to better improve their resume. And to everyone, please be on the lookout for other sessions that we have coming through Career Quest, and also plugging in our Public Service Expo that we have on June 4th. And take care, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.